Welcome back to DarkNight Whispers. Tonight's story is about a man who collected more than trophies. He collected lives. For years, he stalked his victims with the precision of a predator, leaving no trace until one night, someone stumbled into his private gallery of horrors. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to DarkNight Whispers, and comment below. Do you believe killers are born, or are they made? Now let's begin. The small town of Eastbridge had whispered for years about the disappearances. Young women gone without a trace, workers who never came home from their night shifts, a boy who vanished walking back from football practice. Police blamed runaways, drug deals, anything that kept the truth quieter. But the truth had a name. Locals called him the Collector. He didn't just kill, he curated. His house looked ordinary, a sagging two-story farmhouse with shutters that hadn't been painted in decades, a rusting truck in the yard. The kind of house no one noticed. But inside the locked basement, the walls were lined with glass cases, each holding an object, a hairbrush, a pair of shoes, a child's toy, a necklace. And in the center of each case, lit by a single hanging bulb, was a photograph, each victim's face captured in their final hours. Their expressions were always the same: terror. One autumn evening, a security guard named Paul was driving home after his shift when his car broke down on the outskirts of town. He spotted the farmhouse's dim porch light through the trees. Desperate, he walked toward it, hoping to use the phone. The front door was unlocked. "Hello?" Paul called. Silence. The air inside smelled faintly of bleach and iron, and then he heard it. A faint click from the basement. Paul descended the stairs. The basement door creaked open, and his flashlight beam swept across glass. Rows of cases shimmered in the dark. His light caught the faces in the photographs. Dozens of them, mouths open in screams, eyes wide, frozen in fear. He staggered back, gagging. And then he realized the clicking sound was coming from behind him. The Collector stood at the top of the stairs. He wasn't monstrous. That was the worst part. He looked like any man, middle-aged, average build, quiet eyes. In one hand, he held a Polaroid camera. "You shouldn't have come here," he said softly. Paul raised his flashlight like a weapon. "I'll tell the police." The Collector smiled faintly. "No, you won't. You're mine now." He raised the camera. Flash. Paul blinked in the sudden burst of white. The flash from the camera echoed in Paul's mind, momentarily blinding him. When his vision cleared, he found himself face to face with Arthur. The basement seemed to close in around him, the walls pressing in, the air thickening with dread. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest, a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. And in that moment, he knew he couldn't escape. Arthur wasn't just a killer. He was a force of nature, an embodiment of evil. And he had claimed Paul for his own. Days later, the police found Paul's car abandoned. They searched, but found nothing. No footprints, no blood, no sign of struggle. Months passed, people forgot. But in the basement, a new glass case gleamed inside. Was a security badge, a dented flashlight, and a Polaroid photograph of Paul. Eyes wide, mouth open, frozen forever. So tell me, what would you do if you stumbled into a killer's private gallery? Would you run, or would curiosity root you to the floor? Comment your answer below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to DarkNight Whispers, and share this story with someone who thinks monsters are only in movies. Wait, did you just say a monster? Because there's something lurking in my closet that clearly doesn't believe that. No, seriously, check under your bed. It could be hiding there. No, don't bother. Oh, why? Because monsters don't belong in closets. They belong in stories like tonight's. The collector wasn't always a collector. Once he was just Arthur, an unassuming worker at the local paper mill. Then the accident happened, the kind that steals a piece of your soul and leaves a gaping hole where your humanity used to be. Arthur came home one night to find his wife and daughter gone, vanished. No note, no ransom, just an empty house. Grief clawed at him, tearing him apart, but the police found no answers. Days became weeks, weeks turned to months, and the wound in Arthur's heart hardened into ice. The police had failed his family, and so Arthur decided he would take justice into his own hands. Arthur started small, targeting those who reminded him of his wife, pretty young things with long, flowing hair. He lured them into his basement with promises of a good time and trapped them in his makeshift dungeon. There he tormented them, playing with their fears before ending their lives and adding their possessions to his collection. Each kill brought a strange sense of calm, a feeling that he was right in the center of the storm. He wasn't running anymore. For Arthur, killing wasn't enough. He wanted to remember every moment, to hold on to the fear, the terror that pulsed through his victims before their deaths. That's why he took photographs, hundreds of them. He arranged his equipment like an artist arranging his paints. Before each execution, he would set up his camera, position the lighting just so, and then wait for his unsuspecting prey to enter his deadly gallery. The flash from the camera became his signature, freezing screams on faces forever. It had been years since anyone had entered Arthur's basement uninvited. Years since he'd felt the electric thrill of a struggle, the raw, primal fear that his captives exuded. But here was Paul, stumbling into his lair like a moth drawn to a flame. Arthur was intrigued. Most people would have run screaming at the sight of his gallery, not Paul. He stood frozen, mouth agape, taking in the macabre display. Arthur saw this as a challenge. After all this time, someone who wasn't afraid. Paul wasn't prey, not in the traditional sense. He was different, and Arthur decided to make him a part of his collection. As Paul stood in Arthur's basement, staring at the rows upon rows of glass cases, the sheer volume of what he was looking at finally registered. It wasn't just a basement, it was a tomb, a monument to a killer's obsession. And then he saw it, the latest addition to the grim tableau, a Polaroid camera lying innocently on a table. It was the same camera that had flashed just moments ago, the one that had captured his own image, his own terror. This was the level Arthur had taken his madness to. It was personal now. Arthur wasn't sure how long he'd stood watching Paul in the flickering lamplight, observing the way the horror dawned on the man's face, the way his eyes started from case to case, taking in the gruesome inventory of Arthur's crimes. He was captivated by Paul's terror. It was like watching a movie, except this was real. Paul's fear was genuine, and as Arthur snapped the last picture, he saw something in Paul's eyes that made him pause. It wasn't just terror. There was something else, something dark, something that mirrored the abyss within him. Arthur couldn't explain it. It was as if he was seeing himself reflected back at him, his own darkness given form. The town mourned Paul. They held vigils, they left flowers outside the police station. They whispered condolences to his family, but none of it brought him back. The collector had struck again, and the town was left to pick up the pieces. They tightened their locks, bolted their doors, but their innocence was gone, replaced by annoying fear. They knew there was a monster among them, a monster who walked among them unseen, a monster who collected more than just trophies. So tell me, what would you do if you stumbled into a killer's private gallery? Would you run, or would curiosity root you to the floor? Comment your answer below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to DarkNight Whispers, and share this story with someone who thinks monsters are only in movies. Until next time, check your closets. You never know what might be hiding in the dark. Sweet dreams.